بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين. We continue our discussion about the origins of moral concepts. There is a reference to some moral philosophers who are, of course, general philosophers as well in Islamic world, and what they said about fitra. Ibn Sina or Avicenna, in his book Ash-Shifa, Ash-Shifa is like an encyclopedia. It's very great book. It has different sections. It has logic. It has theology. It has tabi'iyat. So in several places, Avicenna makes it clear that human soul, without benefiting from external or internal senses, has no such a thing as fitri knowledge. So it's not that we are born with some knowledge. He believes that our knowledge starts with using our external senses, which are those five, or internal sense. You understand joy, for example, or fear, not by external sense, by internal sense. He says, Ibn Sina says, the very first things that we come to know are mahsusat, means those things that we perceive by our senses. Perception is a technical term that we use in philosophy for understanding by senses. And then we use those moral perceptions to come to universal concepts, kulli. So, for someone like Ibn Sina, it's not understandable, it's not agreeable to say that we are born with some innate knowledge. He says our knowledge starts with using senses. Khaja Nasiruddin al-Tusi, rahmatullah alayh, he says, although sensation alone would not lead to universal ideas, because sensation only is particular. It's about particular things. We have to use aql to take a universal idea from these particular things. So Khaja Nasir says, although sense by itself is not enough to give us universal concepts, but at the same time it has to be known, it has to be understood that the key for all particular and universal types of knowledge is hiss, is sensation. Because human soul, from the time of birth up to the time that understands everything, if a human soul becomes aql mustafad, which can understand everything, from the birth till that time, everything starts with hawas, with senses. And this is why it has been said من فقد حسا فقد علما. فقد علما. Whoever lacks a type of sense lacks a gate of knowledge. Fakhr Razi, who is not a philosopher, but he is a theologian who also makes lots of, debates with philosophers. Ayatollah Mutahari says Islamic philosophy has benefited from attacks of people like Fakhr Razi, because when the questions are raised and objections, then Muslim philosophers had to defend, and this developed philosophy further. Yeah? Fakhr Razi, when he talks about verse 78 of Surah An-Nahl, he says, what is exactly this? He says that human soul at the time of creation is empty. It's free, it's empty from any conception, whether badihi or nazari, self-evident or speculative. It's empty. And therefore he says we don't have any knowledge when we are a newborn baby or when we are in the womb of mother, because human soul is created even before birth, around 4 months of pregnancy the soul is created. So whether it be before birth or after birth, he says we don't have any knowledge. Mullah Sadra also does not believe in innate conceptions in the sense that we are born with them. Okay? So, although we accept fitra, as a general concept, we accept fitra as a way to understand God, but we don't accept fitra in the sense that we are born with some actual knowledge. We have to gain our knowledge. We have to obtain knowledge. And therefore, we need to argue for the validity and the truth of our knowledge. You cannot say, I am born with this and I cannot do anything with it. We have to show how we have come to this understanding, what's the backup for that. Okay. Now, what we want to do, inshallah, is to talk about how our soul, our mind in a more precise way, because our mind is the part of the soul which is responsible for understanding ilm husuli. Yeah? What is mind? Part of the soul which is responsible for understanding ilm husuli. God, in this sense, doesn't have mind. Mind is not used for God, because whenever there is mind, it's ilm husuli, it's through concepts, there can be mistake, there can be confusion. So mind has positive things but also problems. God's knowledge is more than mental knowledge. So mind for human being is responsible for developing these concepts. Now, question: how our mind comes to understand these 7 concepts? First, we start with wujub, bayad, nabayad, ought not. And then inshallah we will talk about right, wrong, good, bad, etc. I need to remind you of something before we go to this discussion. And Ayatollah Misbah has done it in this way. I hope everyone has understood and learned this part of mantiq and philosophy about al-wujub بالذات بالغير بالقياس إلى الغير. Do you remember these three? وجوب بالذات بالغير بالقياس إلى الغير. I review it quickly. Sometimes the relation between existence and something is وجوب بالذات, means the very essence requires existence, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is God. Wajibul wujud بالذات, by his own essence he must exist. In this sense we are not wajib. We are not wajibul wujud بالذات. We are mumkin بالذات. But we have another sense of wujub, and that is بالغير, means the necessity comes from the cause, from an external factor. We are all wajibul wujud بالغير, because before existence becomes necessary, you don't exist. الشيء ما لم يجب لم يوجد. I am sorry if this is difficult for some of you, because this is what we have studied in philosophy, but inshallah should not be very difficult, too difficult, because we are mumkinul wujud. It means that we can exist, we cannot exist, we have equal relation to existence and non-existence. So if we exist, it must be because of something making existence necessary, and if we don't exist, again must be because of something, because in our essence we are neutral, we are equal to existence and non-existence. Yeah, al-mahiyatu mutasawiyatu nisba ila al-wujud wal-adam. We are equal with respect to wujud and adam. So we are wajibul wujud bil ghayr. So al-wujub bil ghayr, where does come from? This necessity comes from illa, from outside. Al-illatu tamma, not al-illatu naqisa. When there is complete cause, means everything that you need, cause, conditions, lack of obstacles, ma'lul becomes necessary. Al-mahiyatu amkanat fahtajat fa'ujibat فَوَجَبَتْ فَأُوجِدَتْ فَوُجِدَتْ. When we studied philosophy, we said you have to remember this for your grave. This is very helpful. When the angels come, you say this and you will get credit, inshallah. If you manage to remember. Okay. So, wujub bil ghayr comes from illat tam. We have another type of wujub, and that is al-wujub bil-qiyas ila al-ghayr. You remember in philosophy, we said we have al-wajibu bil-zat, al-mumkinu bil-zat, al-mumtani'u bil-zat. We have al-wajibu bil-ghayr, al-mumtani'u bil-ghayr, and we don't have al-mumkinu bil-ghayr. And we have al-wajibu bil-qiyas ila al-ghayr, al-mumtani'u bil-qiyas ila al-ghayr, or al-mumkinu bil-qiyas ila al-ghayr. We have 8 types, not 9 types. What does bil-qiyas ila al-ghayr mean? It means when we have 2 things. Qiyas in Arabic means nisba. Bil-qiyas ila al-ghayr means bin-nisba. You have 2 things. When our mind reflects on the relation between 2 things, A and B, says if A is there, B must be there. Or if A is there, B must not be there. Or if A is there, B can be there. It's one of the three. Anything, if you imagine anything with another thing, either the relation between them is al-wujub bil-qiyas al-ghayr, means with respect to this, the other one must exist. Or with respect to this, the other one must not exist. Or it's neutral. For example, I ask you, you tell me the answer. If al-illatu tamma exists, al-ma'lul should exist or not? It must exist. So al-ma'lulu wajibun bil-qiyas ila al-illati tamma. At the same time, al-ma'lulu wajibun bil-ghayr, because of illati tamma. So you can say bil-ghayr, you can say bil-qiyas ila al-ghayr. But now I want to go from another direction, and you tell me. Al-illatu tamma wajibatun bil-ghayr bisabab al-ma'lul. No. Al-illatu tamma wajibatun bil-ghayr because of ma'lul? No. But you can say al-illatu tamma wajibatun bil-qiyas ila al-ma'lul, because whenever ma'lul exists, al-illatu tamma must have existed. You see the difference? Al-ma'lul wajibun bil-ghayr and also wajibun bil-qiyas ila illati tamma. But al-illatu tamma wajibatun only bil-qiyas ila al-ma'lul, not bil-ghayr bisabab al-ma'lul. Is it clear? It was a reminder. So far, it has nothing to do with moral philosophy. Just it was a reminder. Now we want to go to moral philosophy. According to Allama Tabatabai rahmatullah alayh, and he is, as I told you, one of the very first philosophers who reflected on moral philosophy in the Muslim world. He has this idea. He says, our mind started understanding the concept of wujub first inside, by reflecting on the relation between illa and ma'lul for the things which exist inside. For example, your soul is illa for something inside. Okay? For example, you create a mental image. Imagine a flower. Imagine a rose flower. Who created it? You. So you gave necessity to that rose flower. So he says, our mind, by reflecting on the relation between itself and ma'lul that creates, little by little comes to recognition of wujub bil ghayr. First in existential things. Then it comes to akhlaq, to morality. And our mind says, means understands, if you want this end, this ideal, you have to bring this action. For example, you want perfection, you have to pray. So prayer leads to what? perfection. So means perfection is the effect of prayer. So because you want perfection, you must pray. So you can say, do pray. You ought to pray. So where does wujub come in akhlaq? The concept of wujub. Still we are not talking what is wajib or what is not wajib. That's of course little by little becoming clear, but at the moment our concern is how our mind for the first time come to these concepts. Allama Tabatabai says our mind starts first with understanding necessity in existential relations, then it brings it to akhlaq and says, if you want this end, if you want to achieve this, you have to bring this action, or you have to avoid this action, ought and ought not. You must not tell lies. If you want perfection, if you want nearness to God, whatever is your end, don't tell lies. Or say your prayer, keep your promise, fast, be kind. So this wujub for Allama is al-wujubu bil-ghayr, because Allah is giving wujub to ma'lul. Ayatollah Misbah agrees in principle with Allama Tabatabai, but he says it's more accurate to say this is al-wujub bil-qiyas ila al-ghayr, not al-wujub bil-ghayr. Why? Because al-wujub bil-ghayr comes for ma'lul from illah. Al-wujub bil-ghayr is for ma'lul because of illah. Okay? In morality, you say prayer has a wujub because of what? Because of perfection. But perfection is illa or ma'lul? Is ma'lul, not illa. So if wujub comes from ma'lul for illa, it's wujub bil qiyas, not wujub bil ghayr. You understand? Who can repeat what I said? Yes.
Is perfection not a reality?
So the reality of perfection happens when you pray. If you don't pray, you don't have perfection. If you are not keeping your promise, you don't have perfection. So you have to bring this action to have that reality. You are repeating?
Yeah,
Or you are questioning?
could you remind me, please? What is qiyas, please? What is qiyas?
Qiyas means nisbah, in relation to. Bil qiyas ila something means in relation to something, with respect to something. So who can say what Allama Tabatabai says first? Yes.
If I've understood right, Anwar Tabatabai says in order to reach perfection, to go towards prayer.
Of course, everyone says in order to reach perfection, you need to pray, you need to fast, you need to do this. Okay, there's no doubt about this. This is just a technical difference about how to formulate wujub. Okay. So what does Allama say?
Allah says that Allah is giving rise to the one, whereas
What is Allah?
saying the prayers would lead to perfection.
So saying prayer is Allah or ma'lul?
Saying
Is Allah. Saying prayer leads to perfection. So perfection is ma'lul. So what has given necessity to saying prayer? Ma'lul. So the wujub which comes from ma'lul to Allah is bil qiyas.
that is Abdullah Misbah.
That's Abdullah Misbah. But I want to defend Allama Tabatabai. I want to say the solution is what we say in philosophy about al-ghaya. Al-ghaya, the end, as a reality is ma'lul, but as an idea is illah. Why you want to pray? What motivated you to pray? What was al-illatul ghaiya for your prayer? In order to achieve perfection. No, that's I say at the end in Arabic. So, why you do something? For example, why you make this chair? We say, I make this chair because I want to sit on it, I want to have rest. So, having rest is al-illatul ghaiya. You know, we have 4 types of illah. Al-illatul suriyya, al-illatul maddiyya, al-illatul fa'iliyya, al-illatul ghaiya. Illatul ghaiya is the reason that motivates the agent to do something. Okay? Al-illatul ghaiya. So, why you make the chair? You say, I want to sit and have rest. Why you make this house? Because I need a shelter. Okay. Rest was the reason. But when you make the chair, then you can have the rest. So rest as an idea existed before, but as a reality exists afterwards. So al-illatul ghaiya comes before action, but ghaya itself comes after. So what motivated you to say prayer? Perfection. And then you pray, and then inshallah you move towards perfection. So I think both Allama Tabatabai and Ayatollah Misbah are right. You can say illatul ghai is giving wujuba bil ghayr, or you can say ma'lul makes the existence of illah wajib. Is it clear? So this is about the concept of wujub, and it is very similar also to what we have in sciences. For example, we say if you want water, you must bring oxygen and hydrogen. Yeah? This must, this ought, this wujub is factual. It's not something that someone just imagines or, forces. It's a recognition of reality. So in akhlaq, we are very much based on facts. A scientist of akhlaq, a scholar of akhlaq, is like a scientist in another field, in this sense, that both of them try to observe the facts and try to investigate the relations. They, for example, investigate the relation between water and oxygen and hydrogen. Here they investigate the relation between perfection and good actions or bad actions. Bad actions should be removed, good actions should be brought. Okay? So how do you come to understand the concept of wujub? Still, we are not talking about what makes something necessary or not necessary. That is inshallah discussed later. But the concept of wujub, we said, is a concept which is known to us, it's familiar to our mind, because we can even understand it between our nafs and the things that our nafs produces. As we can see it among cause and effect outside, we can see it inside, and then our nafs uses this for examining the relation between our actions and our ideals, our ends. According to Allama, it's wujuba bil ghayr. According to Ayatollah Misbah, is wujuba bil qiyas illa al ghayr. But both of them agree that it means that good action is done in order to get that end, that ideal. We pray, we fast, we are kind to people, we are keeping our promises in order to get that end, which is perfection or nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If the relation is positive, it becomes wajib. If it is negative, then you must avoid it. Ought not. You ought to keep your promises. You ought not to break your promises. Yeah? If you want to burn the wood, you have to bring fire. If you don't bring the fire, it would not burn. For example, if you put extinguish fire, or if you put water on fire, then you will not be able to burn the food. Inshallah, next session we will talk how our mind comes to understand good and bad, right and wrong. So far we understood obligational concepts like ought not, and obligation. Obligation is also understood because it's very easy. Obligation means something that you need to do in order to achieve your end. Also, I remind you of what we said in Ilm Usul al-Fiqh about al-maslahatul mulzima. If you remember, we said wajib is what has al-maslaha mulzima, which means something without which you cannot achieve your perfection. If something helps, but still without that you can achieve, it becomes mustahab. It helps, but it's not necessary. Haram is necessarily stopping. Makruh makes problem, but still is possible. And mubah is neutral. That is also related to this discussion. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.